It started like any ordinary night inside a martial arts gym. Fluorescent lights humming, the sound of gloves striking mats echoing through the air. But no one expected that a few arrogant words from a black belt would awaken something far greater than skill. It would awaken a past buried deep in silence. When a janitor, a quiet, humble man just doing his job, but was mocked and challenged for fun, the room filled with laughter. Yet within minutes, that laughter would turn into stunned silence. What unfolded next wasn't just a sparring match. It was a lesson in humility, respect, and the true meaning of strength. This is the story that left an entire gym speechless. And it all began with a challenge that should have never been made. The echo of punches and kicks filled the gym that Thursday night. Under the blinding fluorescent lights, Derek Mitchell, a proud black belt instructor, stood in the middle of the mat surrounded by his students, the symbol of authority and arrogance. Then his eyes caught sight of someone quietly mopping the floor near the entrance. "Hey, you there, the cleaner," Derek barked, his tone full of mockery. "How about a quick spar?"
"I bet you've never seen a real fight in your life." The man with the mop, James Washington, paused.
At 42, he looked calm, ordinary, and tired from another long day.
"I don't want to bother you, Sensei," he replied politely.
Just finishing up here, but Derek wasn't done showing off. He turned to his students with a laugh that echoed through the gym.
"Everyone, check this out."
The janitors scared to even step on the mat. Some students laughed uneasily.
Others looked away.
None of them knew the truth that James Washington had once been known to the world as Silent Storm, a 5-time world MMA champion. But that was a lifetime ago, before tragedy ended his career and left him hiding from his own past. Derek took a few arrogant steps toward him.
"Come on, old man.
Just a friendly demo. I'll go easy on you." James set the mop down, the handle clattering softly against the bucket. He looked up at Derek, his eyes calm but unreadable. There was no anger in them, just quiet control. "All right," James said after a pause. "But when we're done, you'll apologize to your students for turning their dojo into a circus." A ripple of laughter followed, but this time, Derek's voice trembled slightly. "Big talk from a janitor," he scoffed. "You'll be apologizing to the floor when you hit it." As James stepped onto the mat, something shifted. His posture changed, his steps smooth, grounded, too graceful for a man who'd never trained. Around them, the students stopped what they were doing and gathered in silence. What no one there realized was that 20 years earlier, James Washington had sworn never to fight again. He'd left the ring after an accident that killed his best friend and training partner. An accident that haunted him every night since. But sometimes, life forces old ghosts to return. Derek adjusted his belt dramatically.
"Gather round,"
he shouted to his students. "Watch closely. You'll see why there's a hierarchy in martial arts." The students formed a circle. One of them, a young woman named Sarah Chun, frowned, clearly uneasy. "Sensei," she began hesitantly, "maybe we should just continue training." "Sit down and watch," Derek snapped. "You'll learn more in 5 minutes than in a month of drills." James noticed the fear in her eyes. It reminded him of the look he'd once seen in his own reflection after the tragedy that ended his career. Derek sneered, circling him. "So, janitor,
"Do you even know what a guard is?"
he chuckled cruelly. "Or do you only know how to push a mop?" James didn't respond. He simply stood still, centered, breathing evenly, waiting. Derek pushed him lightly on the shoulder, smirking. But James didn't budge. It was like pushing a wall. A faint, almost amused smile appeared on James's face. "It's been a while since someone tried that," he said softly. Something in his tone sent a shiver down Derek's spine. It wasn't anger, it was control. The kind that comes from surviving battles far beyond the mat. Derek forced a laugh, masking his unease.
"You think this is funny?"
"Let's see how funny you look on the ground." What he didn't realize was that with every insult, every mocking word, he was awakening something powerful inside James. Not rage, but precision. The instincts of a champion long buried. Sarah watched closely, her heart pounding. There was something terrifyingly graceful about the way the janitor stood. Balanced, relaxed, but ready. Like a predator that didn't need to roar. Last chance, Derek said coldly. Either you fight or I'll have security throw you out. James finally opened his eyes fully. Fine, he said quietly. But after this, you'll remember what real respect looks like. The gym went silent. Every eye was locked on them. The arrogant instructor facing the man everyone had overlooked. Derek smirked, raising his fists. You're about to regret stepping on this mat, janitor. James lowered his center of gravity just slightly, a move so subtle most missed it, but Sarah didn't. She'd studied body mechanics for years. What she saw sent a chill through her spine. In that single motion, the cleaner was gone, and the fighter, the legend they called Silent Storm, had returned. The air inside the gym thickened with silence. The students leaned forward, barely breathing. Derek bounced on his feet, his fists raised high, grinning like he'd already won. James just stood there, no stance, no aggression, just stillness. His eyes fixed calmly on Derek, as if reading every movement before it even happened. Come on, janitor.
Show us what you got.
Derek jeered, throwing a quick jab toward James's chest. But James simply stepped aside, effortlessly, gracefully. Derek's punch met nothing but air. The students laughed nervously. Derek frowned and threw another strike, harder, faster.
Again, James slipped away like smoke, his body moving in rhythm with Derek's rage. You dodging old man,
Derek shouted. Stand still and fight. James's voice was calm.
Fighting isn't about rage, he said softly.
It's about control. Before Derek could respond, James shifted, just a fraction of a second, and tapped Derek's wrist with 2 fingers. The black belt's arm twisted involuntarily, and his body followed. In one smooth, almost invisible motion, Derek was on the mat, flat on his back. The gym gasped. Derek scrambled up, red-faced.
Lucky move,
he barked, trying to laugh it off. Let's go again. He rushed forward this time, swinging wildly on kicks, punches, a blur of movement. But to the onlookers, it looked like a storm trying to hit a shadow. Every strike missed by inches. James flowed around him like water, his breathing steady, his eyes steady. Then with a single pivot, James redirected Derek's final kick, sending him sprawling onto the floor again. A stunned hush fell over the room. The sound of Derek hitting the mat echoed like thunder. Sarah, watching from the sidelines, whispered, That wasn't luck. That was mastery. James helped Derek up, extending his hand.
You've got strength, he said quietly, but no discipline.
You fight for ego, not purpose. Derek slapped his hand away, humiliated.
You think you're better than me? You're just a janitor.
That word, janitor, hung in the air. But this time James didn't flinch. He just looked at the young man, pity in his eyes. When I was your age, James said, I thought the same way.
That power made me untouchable.
But power without respect destroys you from the inside. He turned to leave, picking up his mop. But one of the students suddenly asked, Wait, are you James Washington? The Silent Storm? The name hit Derek like lightning.
His jaw dropped. No way, he said under his breath. That can't be him. He's a legend, the students began murmuring. Phones came out, whispers spread.
Someone pulled up an old video on their screen, a clip of a much younger James standing victorious in the octagon, arm raised, crowd roaring, same eyes, same calm face. The truth was undeniable. Sarah looked at Derek. You just challenged one of the greatest fighters in history. Derek's face drained of color. James sighed. wiping his hands on his towel. "That man you see in the video," he said, nodding toward the phone, "died a long time ago." He turned to the students. "I walked away from all that because I learned something the hard way, that a fight isn't won by fists.
It's won by understanding." The students watched in reverent silence.
The arrogance that had filled the room minutes earlier was gone, replaced by awe and humility. Derek looked down, ashamed. "Why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" he asked softly. James gave a faint smile. "Would it have mattered? You didn't see a man, you saw a job title." That single line hit everyone deep. James picked up his bucket, preparing to leave, but Sarah called out, "Sir!"
"Please, teach us. Teach us the way you fight, with control, not anger." He stopped in the doorway.
For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, without turning back, he said, "If you want to learn, start with this. Humility is your first belt." Then he walked out into the night. The rain had begun to fall outside, tapping softly against the pavement. Derek stood there in silence, his reflection in the wet floor staring back at him, not as a fighter, but as a student who'd just met his real teacher. That night, Derek stayed long after everyone left, sweeping the floor himself, the same floor the janitor had once cleaned. And in that quiet, something inside him changed forever. The next morning, the gym felt different. The usual noise of gloves hitting pads and students laughing was replaced by quiet focus. Derek stood in the center of the mat, eyes closed, breathing slowly. He was alone, except for Sarah, who watched him from the doorway. Every movement was slower, controlled.
Every punch ended with discipline, not ego. He wasn't fighting anymore.
He was learning. Sarah smiled softly. "He really changed," she murmured. But there was one person missing, the janitor who had shown him what true strength looked like. James hadn't come to work that day. His old mop leaned against the wall, his locker door slightly open. Inside was a small envelope with Derek's name written in neat handwriting. Derek opened it carefully. Inside there was a folded note and a black belt. Worn, frayed, but still strong. The note read, "Strength without humility is destruction. Control your anger before it controls you. If you wish to master fighting, first master yourself." J.W. Derek's hands trembled slightly as he read. The belt wasn't a trophy, it was a reminder that power meant nothing if you couldn't respect it. He clenched it tightly, whispering, "Thank you, sir."
Weeks later,
the sound of rain returned, the same sound that had followed James out of the gym that night. Derek was closing up the gym when he heard someone coughing outside. He stepped into the drizzle and saw James sitting on the bench under the flickering streetlight, his mop leaning against the wall beside him. "Mr. Washington?" Derek called out, running toward him. "You didn't come back, we thought—" James smiled faintly. "Didn't need to." "You already learned the lesson." Derek shook his head. "No, I didn't. I've been training every day. But not just my body, my mind."
"I want to learn from you." James looked at him quietly.
Then, after a moment, he stood up. His movements were slower now, but his eyes still had that unshakable calm. "You still think fighting is what I teach?" he asked. Derek hesitated.
"Isn't it?"
James smiled.
"No, I teach awareness."
"The kind that keeps a man from throwing a punch he'll regret." He pointed to Derek's heart.
"That's where the real fight happens." Derek nodded, slowly understanding.
"You're right." Then for the first time, James extended his hand, not as a teacher, not as a fighter, but as a friend. "And maybe it's time for your real training to begin," he said.
Months passed.
Under James's mentorship, Derek changed completely. The arrogance was gone, the anger replaced with control. The gym that once echoed with competition became a place of discipline and respect.
New students joined, drawn not by trophies or titles, but by the quiet power of the man who taught them the meaning of humility. James, though still the janitor, was treated like a master.
Everyone called him Sir now, but even as he taught, he never spoke about his past. The silent storm stayed silent until one fateful afternoon. The gym had been invited to a charity martial arts event.
A showcase, not a competition.
Derek insisted James come along just to watch. But when one of the event organizers recognized him, they begged him to do a short demonstration. At first, James refused, but after some persuasion, he finally agreed. The lights dimmed. The crowd cheered as the janitor stepped into the ring. Facing him was a young fighter, fast, confident, and strong. When the match began, James moved like time itself had slowed. Every block, every motion was poetry. He didn't strike hard. He didn't need to. The audience fell silent, mesmerized, and when it was over, James simply bowed and walked off the mat. No victory pose, no arrogance, just grace. As he stepped down, a little boy from the crowd ran up and asked, "Mister, are you a superhero?" James smiled, kneeling beside him. "No, son," he said. "I'm just a man who learned when not to fight." The crowd erupted into applause, not for strength, but for wisdom. Weeks later, the gym hosted a new beginner's class. On the wall hung an old photo, James in his prime, holding a championship trophy. Below it, Derek had added a plaque that read, "In honor of James Washington, the silent storm, the man who taught us that peace is the highest form of strength." As the camera pans out for your video's closing visual, we see Derek teaching a new generation of kids, calm, humble, and patient. He bows before the mat, whispering, "Thank you,
Master." And in the quiet corner, under the same flickering light,
James's old mop stands, a symbol of the man who swept both flaws and egos clean. In a world obsessed with power and pride,
a humble janitor reminded everyone what real strength looks like.
not in fists, not in trophies, but in restraint. Because the greatest warriors aren't the ones who fight the most. They're the ones who know when not to. In a world where people are too quick to judge, this story is a reminder. Real strength isn't about belts, titles, or appearances. It's about heart, respect, and the courage to stand for what's right. The janitor didn't fight for pride. He fought for dignity, and that's something no one can take away. What did you feel watching this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you. If this story inspired you, like the video, subscribe to Blacktail Stories and join us for more emotional, powerful stories that reveal the truth behind ordinary lives, because every tale deserves to be told and every voice deserves to be heard.